The 2011 NBA Draft is one of the best that we've seen in a long time. 7 All-Stars in total. Listen to some of these names. Kyrie Irving, Jimmy Butler, Kemba Walker, Klay Thompson, and the guy I think is the best player to come from that draft, Kawhi Leonard. Drafted 15th overall by the San Antonio Spurs. Wait, what's that? Oh, so he wasn't drafted by the Spurs. Oh, he was traded there by the Pacers. So what if, maybe they hadn't done that and they'd kept him instead? I mean, they had Paul George, so they could have basically done what the Clippers are doing now, but 10 years ago. Yeah, let's do a video on that. How's it going, everybody? This is Troy, host of the Half Court Report YouTube channel. Make sure you like the video, sub the channel, follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff. Kawhi Leonard. So we all know that he spent the first few years of his career with the Spurs. But what we often forget is that he was traded there on draft night by the Pacers. So this is the trade. Kawhi Leonard, who was the 15th pick, to the Spurs for George Hill and the rights to Ezra Lorbeck, who was a big guy from Europe and also the number 42 pick. Back in 2011, George Hill was actually pretty good. He was proving to be a really effective player, both as a backup and as a starter. But Hill was going to be due a contract extension in a year. The Spurs knew that paying him what he was worth would put them in the luxury tax. As a small market team, that's not something they wanted to do, so their only option was to trade George Hill. Check out what Zach Lowe said when he wrote this article for Grantland a few years ago. The Pacers had expressed interest in Hill almost from the moment San Antonio drafted him out of IUPUI. That's where he went to college back in 2008. The Pacers had nearly traded for Hill during the 2010 draft with their number 10 pick as the bait, but they backed out when their preferred draft target, Paul George, was still on the board. But in 2011, the next year, ultimately, they had Paul George, they had Danny Granger. I guess maybe they thought Kawhi might be a little bit too much duplication of those players, so they made the deal. And this is one of the most interesting trades of the last 10 years, and I don't think it gets talked about nearly enough. Because what the Pacers didn't realize, and this would have made them title contenders for years and years, is that Kawhi is just a basketball genius. He was light years ahead of his expected development with the Spurs. He would have done the same thing with the Pacers too. So for the 2011-2012 season, a 20-year-old rookie Kawhi is going to a team with second-year Paul George, who's 21 years old, Darren Collison at the point, Danny Granger, who was their all-star, free agent acquisition David West, and Roy Hibbert. And Frank Vogel is the coach. And this is a defense-first kind of team. So I think Kawhi would have fit in really well. I see him putting up stats very similar to his rookie year with the Spurs, in which he got 8 points, 5 boards, he got a three-pointer here and there, and solid defense. If all this had happened, by his second season in 2012-2013, Danny Granger by this point is injured. He only played a few games. He's out for the majority of the season. Kawhi would have moved into that small forward spot, and all this time the Pacers remain one of the best defensive teams in the league. I still think they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals to Miami. I see the same thing happening also in the 2013-2014 season. I mean, as awesome as that team would have been, I don't think they would have quite been able to overcome LeBron and the Heat. By the time we get to the 2014-2015 season, Paul George is out. That's kind of a lost season for him because remember, he suffered that broken leg in the Olympic qualifying game. Kawhi would have become the first option. So by this point, his defense is some of the best in the entire NBA. And he also scores, and he also rebounds. I see him leading the Pacers to a 6th seed that season, but unlike the previous 2 years, I don't see them making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We're now into the 2015-2016 season. Paul George and Kawhi, they're playing at an all-star level by this point, and they're going to be good enough for home court advantage leading into the playoffs. I think they're going to face LeBron and the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals this year. But this was the year that LeBron's team beat that 70-something win Warriors team. I have them beating the Pacers here too, but the Pacers, they still have that ultimate 1-2 punch. By the time we get to the 2016-2017 season, I see this as a team that would have a chance to get to the NBA Finals against the Warriors because they run up against that same Cleveland team as the previous year. But by this point, I really love their chances because the guys have really developed, they've really got some NBA experience, and I think they could really give the Cavs a run for their money. Got some big what-ifs for the 2017-2018 season because that was the year that Kawhi was injured when he played with the Spurs because he had that quad injury that gave him so much trouble. So if Kawhi is healthy for the Pacers, does Paul George still get traded? That means no Oladipo. That means no Sabonis. If he had been traded, how would they have looked with Kawhi? A lot of what-ifs there. Assuming they keep Paul George, I think Kawhi is healthy as well. Maybe they beat the Cavaliers and then they match up with the Warriors in the finals. And I feel like if they're going that far in the playoffs all these years, they're going to get lucky at least once and possibly win a championship, right? For the 2018-2019 season, Paul George re-signs with the Pacers. Kawhi never gets traded to the Raptors. He and Kawhi are playing like MVP candidates by this point. The Pacers defense is amazing. They've been teammates for 7 years. There's the team chemistry. They'd be clicking on all cylinders. LeBron, he's in LA now, so the East is wide open. So you're telling me that this team with Kawhi and Paul George couldn't do what Toronto did as far as knocking off the Warriors in the finals? Ultimately, though, I think this past year works out how it did in reality. I think LA still wins out for Kawhi. I think he signs with the Clippers in the 2019 offseason. So in this case, I think Paul George forces his way to the Clippers as well. So after this whole scenario is played out, the Pacers are probably in a worse spot as of right now. They'd have SGA due to the Paul George trade. What else, though? I mean, they wouldn't have Sabonis. They wouldn't have Oladipo. They probably never would have gotten Miles Turner because they wouldn't have been bad enough to get the draft pick to be in a position to select him. They've actually been too good for too long to have any high draft picks. So they're in full rebuilding mode by this point. I feel like they still make that trade for TJ Warren. They roll out a roster of SGA, TJ Warren, maybe a center that they've drafted at some point. I mean, you can do this long enough, get into all kinds of alternate realities, and it's just going to make your head spin. In all of this, though, the big question I have is how would Kawhi Leonard's game have developed in Indiana? You may remember that before Kawhi's rookie year with San Antonio, the NBA didn't begin that year until late December due to the lockout. And I've read the story that the Spurs coaches only had a few days before the lockout to work with their players. They really didn't have much time to speak with Kawhi. They didn't have a whole lot of time to work with him and get him ready for the offseason. So the story goes the San Antonio Spurs coaches gave Kawhi a step-by-step way to fix his shot and correct his shooting mechanics while he was away from the team during the lockout. And you do something like this with the hope that the guy is going to follow it. You know, it's the lockout, so you're not really able to keep tabs on the guy. You're not exactly sure what his work ethic is going to be like, and is he doing the things he needs to do? Well, as a testament to how ridiculous Kawhi Leonard's work ethic is, he came back with a completely different shot. In his rookie year, even though he didn't make a ton of threes, only less than one a game, his percentages were actually pretty good. And he showed a lot of promise, especially when you compare those percentages and his shooting to what it was like when he was leaving college and going into the NBA. I think it all boils down to this. Kawhi Leonard is too good of a player not to develop all facets of his game. I think he would have been a very similar player to how he is now if he'd gone to Indiana first. And who knows, maybe he would have even delivered the Pacers a championship along the way too. But yeah, appreciate everybody watching this video. If you enjoyed it, definitely leave a like, leave a thumbs up, and would love if you subscribe to this channel as well. We are still a pretty new channel, growing a little bit stronger every day, so every little bit helps. My name is Troy. This has been the Half Court Report, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, one more thing. Here's some more videos to check out on the Half Court Report channel. I hope you like them, and thanks for watching.